3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today on the show, we're talking about hydraulicking. Hydraulicking, this is a very interesting concept and one that you should be very, very wary of. It's when a vendor is able to sell a property for more than it's actually worth and uses some special tricks in order to be able to do so. So Andrew's going to walk us through what these tricks tend to be, and then we'll have a discussion about how this type of fraud has been found out and how it's sometimes being seen in the current market today and what you as an investor need to be wary of. Andrew, walk us through what hydraulicking is and some of those tricks that vendors use.
Sure. So hydraulicking is an interesting one. It's been around for years. Ed's eyes lit up when I was explaining some of the different scenarios that you can use, and not really, but it's something that's been around. Particularly, it's quite prominent in buoyant markets where properties are going up at a relatively rapid rate. And or at the moment we're seeing a lot of it, and it's not hydraulicking in the old term where it was complete fraud, but it smells a bit bad. And so basically, I'll take you back to 2008. So back in 2008, right in the sort of heat of the GFC, a lot of this came unraveled because you'd had a lot of developers who were selling stuff off plans, and because the market was so strong before that, and basically I can't remember the acronym that they used for it, but basically if you had a pulse, you could get a mortgage back then. And so you could self-declare your income, you could borrow a high percentage. And there was actually a case of some people I know in Christchurch, and they're shady developers. And what they were doing is they were selling properties, and I'm just going to use today's numbers for ease, for say 500,000. Now, that was what the contract said, 500,000 with a $50,000 cash deposit, 10% deposit paid to the developer. Now, the actual sales price was $450,000. There was never actually an exchange of $50,000. And so then what was happening is people were taking that contract to their bank. I think the bank was in on it. So I think they had the bank, the solicitor, and the valuer in on this. Sounds like the start of a bad joke. A banker, a valuer, and a solicitor could walk into a bar. And so you take your contract to the bank. You'd say, hey, I've purchased this property for $500,000 off the plans. I've paid a 10% deposit of $50,000. Haven't. And then the bank would lend you the $450,000. Now, the $450,000 was the actual sales price. So actually, you were borrowing $450,000 and the value was $450,000. The valuer would do an off-plans valuation and say, yeah, that's worth $500,000 all day long. And so the clients were settling these with 0% in, 100% borrowing. Now, if the market just carries on going up, that's a risk that the bank maybe doesn't know about, but they'd probably see it right. The dance stopped. And so what was happening then is people had these properties with 100% mortgages. Then the value dropped a little bit. So say it dropped to $425,000. Now all of a sudden the people owe more than what their house is worth, and then the whole thing comes crashing down. Now in that case, actually, I believe that one of my clients, their brother, was involved in this, and he was the patsy. He was the guy that ended up going to jail from memory, while the other guys ended up saying nothing and staying out of jail. But it was a very, very serious case with the Bank of New Zealand charging quite a number of people. And so the whole thing was just born out of a need to sell more houses. And we're in a market now where we need to watch out for this. And the reason for that is there are a lot of developers under immense pressure to get pre-sales right now. So there are developers who maybe needed to get 50% pre-sales to get finance for a project. Now they've got to get 90 or 100%. And so they have to incentivize people to buy their product. So what you'll often see is they'll have things like cashbacks. Now, cashbacks do have a place in the market, but you've got to be very careful around them. So, for example, if a developer's selling 100 units and the first 25 of them, 25%, they're willing to give a discount to preserve the value of the entire development. They might offer a cashback of, say, $10,000. So if you sign up now, we'll give you a $10,000 discount by way of a cashback. But because the sale is recorded at $500,000, it means that the next 25% don't have a lower valuation. And so that's why often they might call them cashback.
And that happens actually on settlement. So once you've settled, the developer will give you $10,000, for instance, back. Often that just gets lumped in with the deposit, though, doesn't it, Andrew?
Correct. Now, if a bank's looking at the contract, just bear in mind they're not going to consider that cashback as any part of the value. So for any investors that we would work with, what we would be encouraging them to do is treat the purchase price as whatever the amount is minus the cashback. So essentially it is just a discount. And yes, that does affect the value of all of the units, but that is the true and honest way of doing it. Now, you got to be careful because again, I'm seeing contracts all the time at the moment where people are offering significant cashbacks. I think I heard of one last week of $60,000, which was a 10% discount or cashback. Now, let's face it, if you're getting that kind of cashback, it's not real. You're overpaying and then you're getting cash back. So you have to be very, very careful with these. And if you're doing things like a side agreement, so some developers, for example, might do this as a side agreement. So they'll give you the contract to take to the bank and supply the valuer and then do a separate agreement for the cashback. That's fraud. So you need to be aware that if you are being involved in any of these transactions, you've just got to tread really carefully because you don't want to end up in a position where a bank says, actually, you've not disclosed something to us that's material and we're not going to lend against that or to you in the future. So you do have to be really careful. So again, there is a part in the market which would justify a discount, particularly when you're buying off plans or getting a pre-sale, but any significant cashbacks or anything that's hidden from a valuer or potentially even the lawyer and or the bank, that probably constitutes as fraud, so you have to tread very carefully.
And one of the reasons, just to draw out what Andrew was just mentioning around preserving the value of a development, the reason a developer might prefer a cashback in this instance is, say that they've got a development of 50 units, just by way of example, and they want to deliver the first 10 with a just 10% cashback for easy use of numbers. Now, the reason they'd actually want those sales recorded at the higher value, the purchase price that's on the contract, excluding the cashback, is because that will play into any future developments of all their other sales. So if they're settling properties at a 10% discount, that affects the valuation that is put on all of the other properties that they're going to sell, which means they're unable in some instances, or it can make it harder to preserve the value of the rest of that development. And so it makes it harder to sell those other properties at that higher price.
Yes, and the banks the banks are a lot smarter since 2008 because they've seen all of this. They know what to look out for. So there are a few things that banks do now as a precautionary thing. So they will look at your proof of deposit. So they'll want 6 months savings to show A, the money's yours, and B, you're actually saving. So you do have to evidence your deposit. Often you'll have to also disclose where the wealth has come from. They call it source of wealth. So have you made your money from the casino? Have you made your money from something that could be constituted as money laundering? Or have you genuinely saved the deposit from your income? And so you can expect a few more questions about that nowadays. And probably the biggest change that's happened in the last wee while is banks will order the valuation through independent parties. So now you'll use something like CoreLogic or Velocity, either your broker or your bank will do this, rather than you get your own valuation. So rather than you get a friendly valuer to say, yes, it's worth 500 when it's only worth 450, an independent valuation will be ordered where someone will come out blindfolded, they're not literally blindfolded, but they don't know how much you've paid for the property in most cases, and they will look at genuine sales. Now, why this is important is it's to protect you. You don't want to be overpaying on something and tricked through a cashback, thinking I'm getting such a great deal because I'm getting this money, and actually just find that you're overpaying and you have had a hydraulic transaction occur.
Especially because in the event, like say that you purchase a property and the real value is 450k and you get a 450k worth of lending against that, you're now purchasing at 100% with no other equity, which can be very, very risky in the event that property drops in value in that case. And look, while we don't always see these in the market, it's not massively prevalent. It is important as an investor to be aware of these within the market and just have your eyes out for them so that when you do see them, or if you do see them, that you're not thinking, oh, this is a great deal, I'm going to jump on it. Just proceed with caution here. Let's wrap it up there, but please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It does help us get the message out to more people. And hey, as you know, Opus has just taken over Juno magazine, and we are very excited that the first issue is going to be the property issue. We release this every single year with over 100 pages about the property market and specifically investing in property. Now, we are running a special deal at the moment, which is you can subscribe for a year, which is 4 magazines for just $20. Now, I am going to drop a link to that in the show notes, or you can also go to opuspartners.co.nz/Juno. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
We're going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.